Okay, I think we've got a couple more joining us now, but really just wanted to say thank you very much for attending this evening. We're honoured to have Rey Hernandez with us today. Rey is without question becoming one of the most famous names in the world at the moment. Rey, would I be out of order referring to you as a consciousness scientist?
Well, I'm part of a very large group that are consciousness scientists that have been doing this for many years. And all I'm doing is I'm just the orchestra leader coordinating this very large group. But yes, you could put me in that category. Thank you.
Fantastic. No, that's brilliant. Well, listen, as I said, we're absolutely delighted to host you this evening, and delighted and very pleased to be hearing about your new book, A Greater Reality. Just to remind everybody, that goes on sale in June globally, doesn't it?
September 1st.
September 1st. Okay.
Because
great.
Instead of having 3 volumes, we're going to have 4 volumes. And we received many more articles by both the professors and experiencers that we had anticipated. So it takes a long time to edit these articles and then to properly format each of these volumes.
Sure. Okay. Well, I can't wait to read the book. I was a huge thought that Beyond UFOs, the Science of Consciousness was just a fantastic, really landmark work. So delighted to this. So anyway, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Rey Hernandez.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much, James, for this introduction. A little bit about my background. Before 2012, March of 2012, I had zero interest nor knowledge of anything that was paranormal related, UFOs, out-of-body experiences, ETs, the psi phenomenon, nothing. I was a pure materialist atheist. In terms of my academic background, I've been working for almost 25 years as an attorney with the U.S. Department of Treasury. Previous to that, I had been working for many years as an academic at 2 major universities in the United States, the New School for Social Research and the City University of New York. I went to University of California, Berkeley, for my PhD, and Berkeley is the university that has the most Nobel Prize winners in the world. So I never did finish the dissertation because while I had finished all of my course requirements, I'd passed all my written and oral exams, and I defended my dissertation perspective at Berkeley. When I was writing my dissertation at the New School for Social Research, my then ex-wife, who's now deceased, she had a brain aneurysm, and because of that brain aneurysm, she became severely disabled. So I had to quit writing my dissertation, and I took 2 full-time jobs. I had 2 little children. Her mother and sister were living with us, so I was the sole breadwinner for 6 mouths to feed. So, but I always was an academic at heart. And I did have all the training. I went to graduate school, both at Cornell University, which is an Ivy League school, for 2 years to get a master's degree, and then to Berkeley for studying to become a PhD academic. So that's a little bit about my academic background. In terms of my experiences, they all started in 2012, and I'll be very, very brief because my experiences lasted more than 4 years. But let me just tell you how it started. In 2012, we had a 15-year-old Jack Russell Terrier that became totally paralyzed. And my wife, who at that time was a hardcore Catholic, she began to pray all night. And, my attitude, do all the praying you want, nothing's going to happen. Tomorrow, we're going to be bringing her to a vet to euthanize her. And so lo and behold, in the morning, we both woke up. We noticed that she was still totally paralyzed. And so I went back to bed, and she carried her down the stairs to see if she could go to the bathroom. And so within a couple of minutes, I heard my wife screaming at the top of her voice, Ray, Ray, Ray. And I thought she had seen a cockroach or a little mouse or something like that. And I was like, this is Sunday morning. This is 6 o'clock. Leave me alone, basically. And so she kept on screaming, and then all of a sudden she went upstairs and physically pulled me out of bed, and she wouldn't tell me what it was. And so she then went down the stairs. I went behind her, again, thinking that it was a little rodent or something like that. And then when she got into the bottom stairs, actually in the wood, in the steps for the first floor, she disappeared right in front of me and our dog. And then what I'm about to tell you occurred instantly. Even though it might take me a few seconds to explain it, this occurred, within a few seconds. Immediately, I had tunnel vision. I could only see in a certain area, in a certain corner of the house. All the rest was all black. I saw in that little corner what I'm now calling an energy being. And let me describe it. It was approximately 2.5 feet wide, almost a meter in width, 1.5 feet or maybe half a meter in height. It was floating 4 feet off the ground, like a little bit more than 1.5 meters off the ground. It was semi-translucent, and it had numerous colors, tons of colors that were vibrating like this, like a desert mirage. And you could see the wall behind it because it was semi-transparent. And then all of a sudden, whatever that intelligence was totally took over my mind. I didn't care that my wife had disappeared in front of me. The dog was not there anymore. I looked at it, I squinted my eyes, and then I immediately said, this is bullshit. This is what you got me up for this crap. I'm going back to sleep. So then I turned around and I walked up the stairs, back upstairs. I put my hands on my chest, looked straight up, and then I was completely knocked out. Yeah, became unconscious. About an hour later, when I woke up, and I know it was an hour because I looked at the clock when I then arrived downstairs, and instead of 6 o'clock, it was like 7:05 or something like that. And so all of a sudden, I woke up a little bit more than an hour, and then I was now fully conscious. I was now in control of all my mental faculties. So I ran down the stairs, right? And then all of a sudden, my wife reappeared right in front of me. I saw her look down, and our dog was running around the entire living room like when she was a 1-year-old puppy, okay? She still had the same physical body, but she was running super fast, jumping all over the place, celebrating that she had her body back, and I'm assuming her mind as well. And so my wife was like, hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. The angels cured her, the angels cured her, hallelujah, And to me, I was just numb. I didn't say anything. I was just trying to absorb what the hell was going on because I never had anything remotely close to this, right? And then after I recuperated, I then asked my wife, I said, what the hell just happened? Where were you? Where were you? Look at the time, it's 7 o'clock. And, we woke up at 6. Where were you? She goes, what do you mean, where was I? I've been here the whole time. And so we had this argument about time and, later on, 6 months later, I found out that this is called missing time. Okay. But at that time, I had zero idea what the hell was going on. And so eventually my wife told me that when she got downstairs, she saw a physical object that was phasing in and out of reality. And she described it like a little craft, but the way it was an upside down U, the letter U, but upside down, but it was large. It was maybe, again, almost the dimensions that I told you about that energy being that I saw. So it was about maybe less than 1 meter in height and maybe half a meter or 3/4 of a meter in width. But it was like a U, upside down U. And it was silverish color, and it was radiating in and out of our reality. Like one time she saw it very full, very metallic looking. And then another time, it was like, you could see through it. And then she immediately thought it was an angel, and she started kneeling down and praying because she was a hardcore Catholic. She thought that, the Virgin Mary, because the La Virgen de Guadalupe for the Mexicans, they see, the Virgin Mary everywhere, a piece of toast on a tree bark, it's very common to fanatical Christians in Latin America to see images of Marian, they call Marian apparitions. And so, then all of a sudden, this green light came out of it and started scanning her, okay? And it shot white fluorescent light from the side. But she still thought it was, her angels. And then she was telling me all of this. And I said, well, that's not what I saw. And then I told her what I saw. She says, I didn't see that. And she says, you weren't here, I said, what do you mean I wasn't here? I was right, I was there right at the bottom staircase watching all of this, but you weren't here. So it was total confusion, total chaos, right? And so then she drew it out, what she saw, and then I drew out what we saw. And it was two different things. Why? Because when she initially had gone downstairs, I wasn't there. And then when I then followed her down the stairs, she disappeared right in front of me. So she didn't see what I saw. So that was, I think it was Sunday, Sunday morning at 6 o'clock from 6 to 7, I believe it was March the 3rd of 2012, okay? And then after that, I was on the computer, mainly paranormal this, paranormal that, and occasionally UFOs, because she said it looked like a little craft. But I said to myself, UFOs are outside and they're huge, it couldn't be a UFO, so it has to be something paranormal. So I was like, for a very long time, trying to understand what the hell happened to us. And then about 2 months later, the door woke my wife up at 3:30 in the morning. And then she said, okay, maybe she wants to go to the bathroom, and she was going to open up the back door where she always goes to go to the bathroom. So the dog was not going to the back door. She was jumping on the front door. And she never did that because she would only go to the front door when we had our keys, and we were going in the car, or we had her chain to go for a walk. So she was jumping on the front door. This is all what my wife is telling me. And so then she goes out and said, okay, we'll let her go to the front yard. And all of a sudden, my wife hears this loud noise. She said it was like a 747 jet was right above her. And then after a minute, it just stopped. And then all of a sudden she looks up, and it was this huge, gigantic UAP, unidentified aerial phenomenon. But it was physical this time. And it was like the Goodyear blimp. If anyone has seen those, it's huge. And it was very close to her. And then the way she described it that morning, she goes, oh, my angels came and visited me last night. They came in a beautiful angelic craft. And it has stained glass windows all on its edges, just like our church. Oh, how beautiful, my angels, And so I was like, well, draw it for me, what you saw. And she drew it. And I said, you saw a UFO, that doesn't look like an angel. You saw a UFO. And she was like, oh, you're an atheist. You wouldn't understand. So then that's when I understood this thing was UFO related. So then my interest on the internet switched from paranormal to UFOs. And then about 2 months later, my wife stayed a month in Mexico with our daughter. And she then prayed outside at night to her angels, okay? And guess what the hell showed up? These huge UAPs, these UFOs, as huge lighted objects, very close to the ground. They weren't very far away. And so, and twice they were seen by her family members. And one time, and I verified it because I researched it on a particular date in the city of Veracruz. She was up on the top of her sister's house. And this, mind you, this is a large city. She was, praying and praying, and nothing would happen. And they never showed up, all right? At least so she thought. But the next day in the news, and I was able to verify it through Google and through YouTube, a UFO hovered above Veracruz Airport for more than an hour. It stopped airport traffic for almost 2 hours. And it was in the local newspaper called El Dictamen, the main newspaper in Veracruz. And then on YouTube, there were people who took video of this object, okay? And it hovered above the airport, and then it went to the ocean, to the Gulf of Mexico. So there were 3 different videos on that. So my wife didn't tell me during these experiences. She told me when she came back. And I was like, oh my God, you know, what in the world is going on, you know? And so then I had a friend of mine who was going to give me some papers, and I was going to wait for him outside, some legal papers, because I'm an attorney. And so I was going to do him a favor. And so I'm waiting for him, and he doesn't show up. And so I'm killing time now. And I remembered I saw a video the day before of this man named Prophet Yahweh, where he would pray in Hebrew, and these UFOs would appear, but there would be little tiny specks of dot in the sky, and he would have a camcorder, and in the middle of the daylight, he would record them. And I remember the one that I saw was with an NBC, which is one of the major TV studios here in the United States. The local NBC studio recorded him, and they were making out like a joke. They were laughing at him. And all of a sudden, when this UFO appeared, you know, UAP appeared, this black thing in the sky, the professional camera from the TV crew then zoomed in on it. And you could see it was this darkish thing that was semi-metallic that was illuminating and radiating in the sky. And then all of a sudden, okay, back to the studios, back to the studios. Like they cut him off real quickly. So I thought about that, right? And I said, what the hell, let's give it a try, you know? Let's try to call down the UFO that my wife had been interacting with now for almost 6 months. No, 4 months, for almost 4 months. This was in August of 2012, okay? So then here I am. I'm not a praying type. You know, I never was. I was never religious, and I certainly didn't know any Hebrew like Prophet Yahweh. So to me, it was just with my mind, telepathically, I projected a lot of love, being able to interact with this intelligence. Now, mind you, I hadn't seen any videos about people doing this. You know, what is commonly called CE5, or what Dr. Joseph Brooks calls human-initiated contact experiences, which is a much, much better term than CE5. So anyway, H.I.C.E, HICE. I never knew about that, okay? I just, you know, was watching videos on UFOs, you know, nonstop. And so after 15 minutes of trying to interact with, in the beginning, I wasn't very sincere, but then once I got more into it, I became very, very sincere, very, very emotional, very loving, because I wanted to give it thanks for healing our dog, who was like our first child. And then all of a sudden, after 15 minutes of looking around, nothing happened. In my mind, I said, what a freaking, you know, jerk. You know, I used a 4-letter word, but I won't mention it here. You know, doing this thing, you know, I'm going crazy. I need to stop. Stop with all these UFO searches on the internet. Stop pretending that, you know, that I'm calling down these crafts, you know, because I'm going mentally unstable, right? So immediately, within seconds of that thought, I looked up, and right on top of my next door neighbor's house, literally a few feet from his ranch style house. He has a house that's 1 floor, okay? So a few feet, which is like a meter, you know, was the bottom of this huge object, which is like the size of a small football stadium, okay? And it went up like 100 meters up, and it went back like 600 meters. I could have sworn it was over this 6-lane highway that was like 3 or 4 blocks away from us. And then, and I do have a picture of it, a graphic rendition, but it wasn't a very good rendition because it didn't show the scale of it, of how huge it was. Let me see if I could find it here. Hold on a second. Have I shared the screen? People are seeing a screen? Okay, let me hold on a second. Okay, here it is. Okay, if you do people see this large drawing here? If someone can send me in the chat like yes or something like that. I'm assuming people are seeing it, okay? Because I shared it.
Yes, oh, now we can see it.
You can, yes?
We can see it now, very tiny. You might need to reshare your screen.
Okay. How is that now? Not good?
Let me see. Okay, now it's coming. Now it's coming. But it's not showing the image. Am I the only one that cannot see it?
No, I can't see it either. It's just a black screen at the moment. But you can...
Let me do.
I could see it.
Okay, some people can see it. Okay,
Yeah.
well, let's move on because I basically wanted to show that this is a huge object, and then and then all of a sudden, it's a quite lengthy story, but I'll try to make it succinct. There was telepathic communication that took place. I heard a voice of my daughter saying, "Daddy, you and mommy have seen UFOs. Next time you see a UFO, you call me, Daddy. Let me know." My daughter never said that. Now, after many years, what I concluded was that whatever this intelligence is, it was able to upload my my information, my thoughts, and then reprogram my daughter's thoughts and put it in a voice message to me. But it wasn't a voice. It was just like straight information download where I heard my daughter's voice internally in my mind. And so then all of a sudden, my daughter wants to see it. My daughter wants to see it. So I ran out to the window. I'm yelling at her. And then she opens up the window. "What is it, Daddy?" I said, "Run downstairs. There's a UFO here. Run downstairs." So then she began seeing it. And then my friend who I was waiting for came like 10 minutes later with his wife and their 17-year-old daughter. So we had now 5 people. The neighbor, okay, was there at his window, and I believe it was either his daughter or his wife. So here he was looking at 5 people. His next door neighbor, who was a good friend of his, and their 10-year-old daughter were just staring above his roof, okay? Now, the logical, normal thing to do would be to meet and knock on his door and say, "Pablo, get the hell out. Look what's on top of your roof." Or for Pablo to go out and say, "What? Do I have a fire on my roof? Why are you guys just looking on the top of my house nonstop with your tongues hanging out?" You know, that never took place. Why? Because this intelligence is able to control your thought patterns, okay? Also, when my friends began to question what this was, they tried to explain it away with all these really crazy explanations. So after like the 3rd or 4th explanation, I just busted out laughing, in my mind, right? And I projected a thought to this intelligence, and I'll say it almost verbatim, so it's filled with a couple of cuss words. But basically, what I thought, I said, "You better come up with some better shit than this, because my friends don't believe you." Okay, so immediately, once I said that, instantaneously, that image that you saw totally was deleted in the sky and instantaneously replaced now by hundreds of very large stars. Now, these were not stars that were in the sky. They were in that area where that original UAP was supposed to be. And now each of those stars were blinking on and off, on and off, on and off like this. Like the closest description I would have is like the back of a bicycle. I don't know, people have seen those blinkers that they go like this. Okay, that's how that was. And then all of a sudden, what people in your movement call powering up, in certain sections, one star at a time would like blow up to be big, the size of the moon, and then slowly go down again. Okay, and that happens sporadically in different parts of that perceived UAP. So it was a totally different display, and it occurred instantaneously. Now, over the years, I've learned a lot from the research that we're doing on experiencers, and what I now hypothesize, just like Dr. Joseph Burks, who's been studying this phenomenon since 1992, when he started off with Greer, Dr. Greer, And so he reached the conclusion that we're dealing with a virtual reality phenomenon, and whatever this intelligence is able to project images to you. Someone has a speaker on. If you could mute it, thank you, Simon. And so that's just how it started. After that experience where I was interacting with this UFO, then it was like nonstop for 4 years, diverse paranormal experiences. I mean, some of you might know Jim Merberg, who does, he has a monthly CE5 group in Tampa, Florida. I brought a group from Miami, Florida up there. So when everyone went in, because they were dead cold, it was like 12:30 at night, everyone was freezing to death. It was so cold. Something told me, go back outside, right? And within 10 minutes of me going out there, I focused on a little area, a certain area, okay? And from that area appeared this huge UAP that flew right above us, like at most 100, what do they call it, 100 yards, which is like 33 meters, okay, right on top of us. And it went right above us at an angle. And it was like the size of 2 school buses, silverish metallic color, had no noise, like a low humming sound. So I've been able to do that, you know, for quite a time at will. At this point, I don't do it because I don't have a need for it, you know, because I've had so many paranormal experiences. It's not, you know, to me, it's these are peripheral things that are happening. So anyway, so there was another experience which led to the formation of the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Free Foundation. And that's what I'm going to talk about, some of the data findings, and I'll describe it, what that was, and also this new organization. So let me go share the screen, and if folks can please let me know. Hold on a second. Slideshow from the beginning. Okay. Okay, it didn't go from the very beginning. Let me try it again. Okay. Does everyone see this slide?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. It's not, it doesn't take the whole page, right? It's only part of the page, right? Is it large size that people can see it?
Yes, it's on a slideshow.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you for the response. I don't know who it was, but thank you. The organization I'm currently affiliated with, I'm one of the co-founders of it. It's called Consciousness and Contact Research Institute, CCRI. And it's a 501c3 academic research institute. And we have 2 websites, but they're currently under development. They will be opened up on September 1st, okay? But I encourage everyone to write down my email, okay? Very important, because I'm going to send you a whole bunch of free documents about our first book. I'll send you various chapters from our first book, and I'll send you information about the CCRI, the project that we're currently working with. So my email is info@experiencer.org, info@experiencer.org. Send me an email, and I will send you over 350 pages from our first book. And those are the most important, I mean, they're all important, all the chapters, but if I were to pick the most important chapters, it would be the ones I'm sending you, which is analysis of our data. And so let's go to the next slide here. Okay. CCRI is, as I said before, is a non-for-profit academic research institute. And what we're focusing on is researching what is consciousness, what is the nature of our reality. And we're doing that by undertaking cross-comparative research on individuals that have had contact experiences with non-human intelligence via not just with UFOs, but with what we're calling the contact modalities. And if folks can see that to the right, that's the front page of our book. And if you could see NDEs, OBEs, UFOs, spirits, and a whole bunch of other paranormal topics and concepts. So that's the front cover of our book. I'll talk a little bit about our book in a couple of minutes. CCRI has 15 PhD academics. We also have 5 medical doctors and 10 lay researchers. So we're talking 30 researchers overall, It's a huge organization. And what we're doing is we're embarking on a 5-year academic research study of the experiencers of the major contact modalities. And we're going to be doing that with quantitative and qualitative surveys, and finally with structured interviews. Similar to what we did with the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Free Foundation, which I'm going to go into in a couple of minutes here. Okay, CCRI hypothesizes that we are interacting with non-human intelligence via various paranormal modalities, and that all of these contact modalities might be derived from one source. In other words, it might be one phenomenon, but right now people are studying them as separate and distinct phenomena. For example, you go to UFO conference and you talk to almost all of the so-called experts in the field, these speakers, they will tell you, what the hell does NDEs have to do with UFOs? What does OBEs have to do with UFOs? What does the paranormal have to do with UFOs? Well, I'll show you in my presentation from this data that we collected over 5 years from more than 4,000 different experiencers from over 125 countries, that these people are wrong, okay? That the data reflects that it's one source and one phenomenon. Now, let me continue. We hypothesize that consciousness is what unifies the contact modalities, and that consciousness is primary and not our material reality. Okay, we also hypothesize in a post-materialist view of reality. Okay, the majority of the academic research, I would say almost all of them, we hypothesize that we're living in what is commonly called a virtual reality, and that this might explain all of the contact modalities, how they're interrelated. This view of reality is considered a post-materialist view of reality. Okay, the majority of the research in CCRI of the contact modalities, as explained before, the folks that are researching UFOs, researching other aspects of the paranormal, for example, parapsychology. Many of these people still have a materialist perspective, okay? The CCRI academics, medical doctors, and researchers do not. Now, materialism, okay? The idea that matter is the only reality, and the belief system that the mind is nothing but the physical activity of the brain, and that our thoughts cannot have any effects upon our brain and our bodies, our actions, and the physical world. Well, if anyone, like in your group, that has ever done CE5, you know that your conscious thought can affect contact, okay? Research on quantum physics, the psi phenomenon, near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, mediumship, hallucinogens, and now our free experiential research study supports the hypothesis that the mind can exist separate from the brain, and that consciousness is the key to be able to understand these complexities. As I said earlier, what CCRI is going to embark upon is a comparison and contrast research study on the experiencers of the diverse contact modalities. Now, finally, what the hell is a contact modality? Well, what they are is all the different ways that humans are piercing the veil of our reality and having contact with non-human intelligence, okay? So examples are the UAP, commonly called UFO contact experiences, but our organization preferred to call them UAP, because when people use the term commonly of UFOs, you think of a material object. Well, the vast majority of these types of visual sightings are not a physical craft as people think it is, okay? Near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, contact via ghosts and spirits, remote viewing contact, hallucinogenic contact via DMT, psilocybin. Psilocybin is the ingredient in magic mushrooms. DMT is the ingredient in ayahuasca, and other types of hallucinogenic journeys. There's a major university, medical school in the United States that's been doing research on hallucinogens now for several years. And they've just published 2 papers, which are going to be in our book. One is on researchers that have had experiences with what they thought was God, you know, the universal mind. Other was angelic type of contact. And another one was how these people change over time. via hallucinogens. And as you'll see, that's a very, very common theme with both UFO contact experiencers, near-death experiences, and out-of-body contact experiences. Okay, this is like a graphic image showing how it's all interrelated, and that consciousness is the key. This is of the contact modalities. That and the bottom is one of our websites, but as I said before, it's not operational until September 1st. Now, my audio is not working if I share a screen, but I had excerpts from an interview that I did with George Knapp. He wanted to interview me. I said, okay, if I can interview you. Okay, and he agreed. So this is at the home of Dr. John Alexander, and I'm holding our book, Beyond UFOs. And here is an excerpt of what he said. Okay, he said the lesson is that all of these paranormal phenomena, what we're calling the contact modalities, are interrelated. So he knows it's all interrelated. And this is a man that's been interviewing, UFO contact experiencers, UFO researchers, NDE researchers, NDE experiencers, out-of-body researchers, experiences, all of the contact modalities. He's had these people on his radio show. His radio show is called, goodness, my Alzheimer's is kicking in, Coast to Coast. Okay, he's one of the major hosts on Coast to Coast. And he also said that flying saucers might not be crafts from other worlds. These visitors might not be from another planet. He says flying saucers, which is a materialist ufology perspective, is not the answer to these bigger questions. Now, mind you, this is the host of Coast to Coast, okay? He says if you're just focusing on materialist ufology, you're not going to get the bigger picture, okay? He says you need to have a much more broader understanding of the nature of our reality, the reality that is far more complex than we can imagine. Also, he also believes that consciousness is primary. Okay, that's another component. So he finally states that that the interrelationship of all of the contact modalities, he says, it makes just focusing on UFOs, Roswell, and UFO crashes to look very small. So in other words, he's telling us, look, if you just focus on materialist ufology, that's BS. You're not going to learn anything from that. You need to be focusing on the bigger complex questions. Okay. And that's what we're doing with our organization. So George Knapp is a very strong supporter of what we're doing. Dr. John Alexander, he's written a book about UFOs. He wrote his PhD dissertation on near-death experiences. He was the second president of the International Association of Near-Death Studies. He's also been the president of the International Remote Viewers Association, on and off for the last 30 years. And also when Robert Monroe was still alive and he had his institute in Virginia, he would spend literally months at a time to learn how to do OBEs. And John has lectured on the topic of UFOs to all of the major UFO conferences over the last 20 years, if anyone knows who he is in the name. So this is a man that really has researched all of the contact modalities. And this is what Dr. Alexander has stated. He said, to understand the UFO phenomenon, we need to look at it via a wider context of the contact modalities, i.e. UFOs, NDEs, OBEs, remote viewing, shamanism, poltergeists and spirits, etc. And not as each of these are separate phenomena. He says that no, they're not separate phenomena. Okay. He says one of the problems is that we tend to stovepipe each phenomenon as a single discipline instead of viewing it via an interdisciplinary approach. He says somehow all of these phenomena are connected. Now, as I said before, John Alexander is one of the members of our research committee. And I don't have the full list of it, but let me go through my presentation here. Cross-comparative research. How can we begin to study the relationship between UFOs, UFO contact, and near-death experience contact, OBE contact, all the experiences of the contact modalities, when there was no statistical data on the UFO contact experience? Okay, literally what you had was 1,000 people have written their books about their contact experiences, and then you have literally almost 20 people that have written books based upon hypnotic regressions. Okay. And so these hypnotic regressions, there's numerous problems with hypnotic regressions. I won't go into all of that. Okay. I could be here an entire 2 hours just talking about that. Primarily leading questions, selecting your subjects. There's several very, very prominent researchers that in the hypnotic regression field that have spoken in UFO conferences for 30 years. And these people will not touch an experiencer that had a positive experience. No, they will only work with individuals that have had negative experiences. Why? Because their mindset was that all of this is negative. Okay. So it's like BS going in, BS going out. That's how that worked. Okay. So in other words, there was no data, statistical data on this. So we needed to create that statistical data. And that's what I'm going to be talking about. Okay, so the Free Experiencer Research Study is the world's first comprehensive multi-language statistical academic research study on UAP-related contact experiences. And our book there to the right is titled Beyond UFOs, The Science of Consciousness and Contact with Non-Human Intelligence. We had 3 co-authors. The other 2 individuals were Dr. Rudy Shields, who was a retired professor of astrophysics at Harvard University, and Dr. John Klimo, who for 45 years taught research methodology and has written over 10 books on the paranormal. And that's what he primarily focused on, the paranormal. So we were the 3 co-editors of that book. And it's at 820 pages, and it's got 15 chapters. Now, in order to participate in this research study, to qualify for it, you need to have said yes to these 2 questions. Have you seen a UFO? Yes. Okay. The next question, have you had contact with a non-human intelligence? Okay. So if you said yes to both questions, then you were allowed to take the survey. Okay. Now, the four co-founders of the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Free Foundation obviously was the late Apollo 14 astronaut and the 6th man to walk on the moon, Dr. Edgar Mitchell. And he passed away in 2016. And he didn't see the publication of our book because our book was published in 2018. But he was there from when we first started the research study in 2013. And he was an integral part of developing the research methodology and guiding us and steering us. The other co-founder, and again, one of the co-chairs of the research committee, and he was actually the director of the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Free Foundation, is Dr. Rudy Shields. And as I said before, he is an emeritus professor at the Harvard Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics. He was there for 45 years. And he publicized in various academic journals that Stephen Hawking was completely wrong in terms of his theory of black holes. Okay. Before Hawking passed away, he publicly admitted that he had been wrong on black holes in numerous areas. Now, he never gave Rudy credit for it, but just let you know, the brilliance of these 2 individuals that we had in our group. The other co-founder is Mary Rodwell, and she's not a PhD academic, but she's been researching the UFO experiencer contact phenomenon for over 35 years. And she's originally from the UK, and she's been living in Australia now for many years. So that's my dear friend, Mary Rodwell. And obviously myself, I was the 4th co-founder, and I was the co-chair of the research committee. The other co-chair, as I mentioned earlier, was Dr. John Klimo. He was the co-author of our book with Dr. Rudy Shields and myself, and he taught research methodology for over 45 years. He was a professor of psychology. The other co-chair, I should have put a picture of him, not just a picture of one of his books, is Dr. Bob Davis. Dr. Bob Davis was a retired professor. Well, he is, because he's still alive, a retired professor of neuroscience at the State University of New York. So here's a man who taught for 35 years research on the brain and how the brain operates. Now he's writing all these topics that are totally independent of the brain. So he's written 3 books on it, and this was his middle book titled Life After Death. He also wrote a book titled UFOs, Should We Believe? And also he wrote a book about consciousness and contact. That was his last book. Now, the research methodology for our research study, the free experiential research study, we had 3 surveys. Surveys 1 and 2 were comprised of 600 quantitative questions. Survey 3 was 70 open-ended questions where individuals got to write out the details to these 70 questions. For survey 3, we received over 10,000 pages of writing from about 1,300 experiencers. For 3 years, we publicized our research study on YouTube, weekly postings to over 500 Facebook sites, monthly mailings to over 8,000 names in our email list, internet postings, and over 200 radio shows. Now, mind you, the people in our committee, we had many, many people that were on radio shows on a weekly basis. For example, Mary Rodwell, Kathleen Martin, many of you know who she is. She wrote the book on Benny and Barney Hill. She wrote 3 other books with Stan Friedman, Rosemary Ellen Guiley. Almost every week she was on a radio show talking about her more than 60 books that she had written on the paranormal. Barbara Lamb, Dr. Leo Sprinkle. These were the non-academic researchers that were part of our group. And then we, many of the academics, these are not folks that appear on radio shows, folks that I mentioned to you before. So we only use conscious, explicit memory and not memory based upon hypnotic regression, lucid dreams, or channeling. Now, to discuss that topic in detail will require at least a half an hour of elaboration. We had our surveys in multiple languages, in English, Spanish, French, German, Slovak, and very soon we're going to be doing it in Chinese. And so what you're going to be seeing now, my presentation, is the data from the English language survey. Now, we cut off, what I took this data from was as of June 1st, 2018. And we had a total of 4,145 responses to our phase 1 survey from over 125 countries. So this is a huge amount of people. For phase 2 was 2,000, almost 300. For phase 3 it was almost 1,500. And I said before, for phase 3, we received more than 10,000 pages of written responses to the 70 open-ended questions. So this is a huge project. It took us 5 years to do this. Now, as I said before, this was developed and supervised by PhD academics. Now, there were numerous major findings from this, but if someone were to say, okay, Ray, just give me the 4 major findings, okay? They would be as follows. Number 1, these experiences were overwhelmingly positive experiences. Now, there are nuances to that, which I'm going to go over, okay? But at the end of it all, when people were taking their survey, it might have been 30 years after having contact experiences, when they took their survey, they said this was overwhelmingly positive. Number 2, these people were totally transformed. Their worldview, their psychological outlook, totally transformed for the positive, okay? Number 3, while mainstream ufology basically sees these experiences as physical experience. In other words, you see the Roswell crash, the Nimitz, the Rendlesham Forest, you know, people that do CE5, they see these physical objects, okay? That's how mainstream materialist ufology mainly sees this. What we were able to conclude is that the UFO contact experience is primarily not physical, they're psychic experiences. And I'll tell you, and I'll give you data to support that. Number 4, these experiences involve a manipulation of space-time, which leads to the hypothesis that these experiences might be interdimensional in nature. And again, I'm going to be presenting data to support that, that finding. Okay, now let's explore the first topic. Was your contact experience positive, negative, or neutral? Now, we asked that question in more than 40 different ways, because depending how you ask a question, you'll get a different response. Okay, so the following is just a few of these 40 questions that we asked. Okay, so this is straightforward. Okay, how would you describe your experiences? Was it positive, negative, or neutral? Okay, so these are forced choice questions. That means you had to pick one of those 3. Okay, if you took our survey. If not, you couldn't continue. Okay, so what they told us was that 66% viewed it as positive. Neutral was 29%. And negative was only 5%. But yet, if you go to YouTube, if you go to the internet, you'll see this as primarily as a negative experience. If you go to many UFO conferences years ago with some of these major so-called experts, they'll tell you that it was all negative. All this experience is all negative. Well, these people are totally clueless. Okay, let's focus on specific questions. One of the questions that we asked was your experience positive, negative, or neutral? Okay, we put 5 different categories. I'm sorry. We had the category of 12 different types of beings, okay, physical beings that people saw physically. And I just put up the top 7, I guess it was here. Okay, now the number 1 type of being that people saw at 55% was the energy being. Okay, it wasn't the short grays. Okay, it was the energy beings that was at 55%. The human looking being was at 52%. The short grays came number 3. They were at 51%. The ghosts and spirits were at 47%. The tall grays were at 33%. The reptilians were 25%, and the insect or the mantoid beings were at 21%. Okay, so even for the reptilians and the insectoids, the reptilians, 644 people had contact with reptilians. So these are huge numbers. Okay, now towards the right of that, you'll see 3 categories. One was the percent that said it was positive, the percent of the folks that said it was negative, and the percent of the folks that said that it was neutral. As you can see by the energy being, only 7% said it was negative. For the human looking being, only 5% it was negative. For the short grays, it was 11% said it was grays. Okay, and then for the ghosts and spirits, only 7%. For the tall grays, 12% said it was negative. To reptilians, 23%, and for the insectoid, the mantid type of beings, 10%. So what we did is we saw that 23%, and we said that doesn't reflect the other categories, right? So we looked at the survey 3 responses to the people that had reptilian experiences. These are the open-ended questions where people got to write out the details of their experiences. Excuse me. And what we found out was that the vast majority of these 23% that said it was negative, they wrote that it was negative, not because the reptilian did something bad to them, okay, but because they were scared shitless when they saw it, because of the physicality of this being, okay? If you could imagine, all of a sudden, like Barbara Lamb, okay, you're vacuuming in your living room, and all of a sudden, within like 2 feet from you stands this 7 to 8 foot tall being. It has a body of a crocodile with a long tail. It's all green. It's wearing some kind of a uniform on, and it's got eyes like a cat that's standing up right up. And so you see this thing and you're looking up at it, you're going to be defecating in your pants. You're going to be so scared, okay? But what happened is that for many of these people, they saw the reptilian again, but it didn't scare them anymore. They began to have telepathic communications with their reptilian beings, okay? Or the being just kept on looking at them, and then upon reflection and say, okay, it didn't rape my wife. It didn't eat my daughter. Barack Obama is not a reptilian, because that's all the BS that's circulating by, what's his name? David Icke, is that his name? And all these other people that talk about the reptilians. Okay. These people are totally clueless because we have data for 644 people that had reptilian experiences. So basically what we concluded was that these beings did not do anything bad to them. It's just that people were scared because of the physicality of the being. Okay. But even then, 60% said it was neutral. Okay. So all the information that's circulating on the internet about all of these non-human intelligence, it's all completely wrong. Okay. Now, mind you, this is over 4,000, almost 200 individuals from over 125 countries around the world. Another straightforward question. If you could stop your ET contact, and we put in parentheses, non-human intelligence, whenever we use the word ET or non-human intelligence, we always use the other phrase, okay? If you could stop your ET contact experiences, would you? 84% said no, keep it coming, baby, keep it coming, don't make it stop. So if these experiences were so horrible, then why did 84% said no, keep it coming? Do you believe that ETs are bad, malevolent, or evil? 91% said no. Okay, so that was the first aspect of positive, negative, and neutral. Okay. And as you could see in those questions that we asked before, there was not one leading question in there. Okay, these are straightforward questions. Okay, was it positive, negative, or neutral? That's straightforward. Next topic area. These experiences resulted in a positive transformation of the experiencer. Okay, now we took 70 questions from this research study of Dr. Kenneth Ring. Kenneth Ring was the first president of the International Association of Near-Death Studies. He's now a retired professor of at the University of Connecticut of psychology, and he's written numerous books on near-death experiences and many academic-based articles as well. He's one of the pioneers of NDE research and one of the experts on it. So I believe this was in 1992. He published a book titled The Omega Project, Near-Death Experiences, UFO Encounters, and Mind at Large. This is 1992. And what he did in that study, he compared 85 individuals that had UFO abduction type of experiences with 85 individuals that had near-death experiences. And he had approximately 400 questions. But one of the areas that he wanted to focus on was, how did these people change? How were they before their experiences started? And how were they after their experiences started? And what he concluded was that both of these groups, both the abductees and the NDE experiencers, changed in exactly the same way. Okay, depending on which of the 70 questions that were asked, the response was anywhere from between 75 to 85% said it was a positive transformation. Now let's go over some of these specific questions. You know, not all of them, because we don't have time for that. So all of these questions started: how did ET contact change your life? Okay, how did ET contact change your life? So we said highly positive effect. It says, please move this window away from the shared. I don't know what they're talking about, but I'll continue with the presentation. Whoops. Okay, so highly positive effect on changing your life, slightly positive effect on changing your life, neutral effect, slightly negative effect on changing your life, and highly negative effect on changing your life. As you could see, 73% said it was positive effect on changing their life. Neutral was 17%. And those are mainly the low-level experiencers, people that might have seen a UFO once or twice and have one type of contact experiences, and that's it. That was the vast majority of the neutral. The people that had the more positive experience, the highly positive, were people that continued to have contact experiences over the years. Slightly negative effect on changing your life, 6%. Highly negative effect on changing your life, only 4%. And again, that totally contradicts what's circulating in materialist ufology. Now let's look at some of these questions. As I said before, depending on the question, between 73 to 85% had a profound effect on changing their lives. Now, let's look at specific questions. Okay, this specific question here. Since I first became interested in my UFO experience, okay, and towards the left, you'll see strongly increased and increased somewhat. So these are the positive effect on how their lives changed. Had not changed at all, that's the neutral effect. And then decreased somewhat and strongly decreased. So the ones that put in bold are increased, either strongly increased or increased somewhat. So since I first became interested in my UFO contact, my desire to help others, my compassion for others, my appreciation of the ordinary things of life, my sensitivity to the suffering of others, my concern with spiritual matters, my desire to achieve a higher consciousness, all increased. As you can see, some of them, most of them, very large numbers. Okay. For example, the spirituality, 83% said that their concern with spiritual matters increased, became more spiritual. My appreciation of nature, my spiritual feelings, my concern with the welfare of planet Earth, my understanding of what life is all about, my personal sense of a purpose in life, my concern with ecological matters. All of a sudden, they didn't care about having a new Mercedes every year. They'll deal with the same old Honda Accord, okay? Instead of going to church every weekend, instead they focused on spirituality, became more spiritual. They became much more ecologically friendly, very concerned about planet Earth, how we're polluting our planet. They became much more loving, much more caring, okay? So these are just some of the examples of how they change for the positive. Okay, now let's look at the opposite of it. Okay, since I first became interested in my UFO contact experience, let's look at what decreased. Okay, so what decreased? My concern with material things. As I said, no longer these folks care about money, becoming wealthy. Okay, greedy. Okay, as you could see, what decreased were people that became more materialistic was 6%. Okay, my interest in organized religion, again, it was 73% said that their interest in organized religion decreased. 27% said it remained neutral. My competitive tendencies, all of a sudden, squash your coworker, so you can get ahead on your job. No, totally decreased. Fear of death. Okay, we're not talking about NDE experiencers here. We're talking about UFO contact experiencers. All of a sudden, the people whose fear of death increased was only, 4%. Okay. The vast majority, their fear of death went down tremendously, 73%. My desire to become famous, all of a sudden, ego went down. I don't care if I'm famous or not. Okay. So that was how people changed for the positive based upon their UFO contact experience. Now, the third major finding is that these experiences were not primarily physical contact experiences, okay? That these were primarily seen as psychic or paranormal experiences, okay? So let's take a look at some of that, okay? Again, mainstream materialist ufology has zero understanding of what I'm talking about, of this topic. But let's look at the data, because the data speaks. Now, this is the data not that Rey Hernandez invented. This is the data that's coming from over 4,000 UFO contact experiencers from all over the world. Okay, so to the right, you'll see the response. Again, these were fixed choice responses, either yes or no. There was no intermediary here, okay, yes or no. So have you ever had an out-of-body experience? 80% said yes. Have you ever had a near-death experience? 37% said yes. Have you ever had a medical healing on either yourself or a member of your family? 50% said yes, okay? I said yes because our dog was like a member of our family, okay? So 50%, huge numbers, have had a medical healing. Did your experience involve some type of telepathic communication? Like when I was interacting with that UFO outside of my house. Okay, telepathic communications back and forth. Well, guess what? Almost 8 out of 10 people that took our surveys said yes, they've had telepathic communication or a thought transference, or direct knowing being given to them by this non-human intelligence. Another interesting part here, being brought to a matrix reality, 50%. Just like people that have seen Jodie Foster's movie, Contact, where she was brought to a multi-dimensional reality, extremely common, 50%. I had that experience that happened to me while I was driving my car in the middle of a traffic jam. I was taken outside of space-time. I was brought to another reality, and I was given all these lessons about the nature of consciousness in our reality. And it seemed like it was 20 to 30 minutes, but yet when I was brought back to my car, I was still in the middle of a traffic jam, okay? So it's like zero time had elapsed. The same interview I was listening to, this man that was doing a documentary on liposuction on a public radio station, like that didn't skip a beat, okay? So, but yet I'm not the only one. It was 50% of the people mentioned that. Have you ever had a past life memory? For example, memories of your consciousness in a previous life? 2/3 of the people said yes. Have you ever seen what can be described as a ghost or a spirit? 76%. Do you have memories of you visiting what is called heaven or the spirit world? 46%, almost half the people. Have you ever seen a small colored orb? And we specifically asked them the question that this is not through a photo or a video imaging, but live, physical. Well, 2/3 of the people said yes. Have material objects mysteriously appeared right in front of you or other members of your family? That in parapsychology, that's called an apport. Well, 25%, 1 out of every 4 people said yes. Have material objects ever fallen or suddenly moved around you or the members of your family without any reasonable explanation? 61%. Can you see or feel energy or auras around people? 74%. Huge numbers. Okay. So this is just a continuation of that. So what we learned from all of this is that the vast majority of these people, they're having paranormal experiences, primarily paranormal experiences, in huge numbers. So what we included was that the number of them seeing actual UFOs, was not these huge numbers like they're seeing hundreds of UFOs. There are some people that basically when they go out and they call a UFO, they see a UFO. Those are rare exceptions, okay? But the vast majority of percentages of these people experiences were considered paranormal psychic type of experiences, okay? Rather than the UFO related physicalist experiences. Okay, what is the information received by non-human intelligence? Okay, so we asked that question. Did you receive any type of communication from an ET or a non-human intelligence? Well, 80% said yes. Okay, these are huge numbers. 8 out of 10 people said yes. I've received communication from a non-human intelligence. Okay, now we asked a question. Okay, as I said before, we defined ET as non-human intelligence. They were synonymous terminology that we used. So the response here was yes or no. And as you could see, the very large percentages of people saying yes, okay, was the communication in your native language. 75% said yes. And that was also for the people that took the Spanish survey, people that took the German survey, the Slovak survey, okay, all of these people said yes, it was in my native language. Not all of them, sorry, 75% approximately, give or take 5 percentage points for the different surveys. Were you given reassuring messages? 61% said yes. Were you provided with a spiritual message? 54% yes, I was provided with a spiritual message. Were you given a message of love or oneness? 54%. Did ET express to you concern about humanity's behavior? 45%. The vast majority of this was how we are destroying our planet, okay? And also our behavior of needing to become much more spiritual. Those are the 2 main categories. Do you believe that you possess information about advanced technology, physics, scientific information that you've never read or learned in your normal environment? 42%. Very, very important topic. I went through a phase about 4 months in total where I was getting all of these physics downloads. And I was sharing it with Edgar Mitchell and Rudy Shields and another PhD physicist that we had in our group. So I asked that question because it happened to me. And I had no idea it was going to be this large number. 42% said yes. Did ET give you information that they want you to share with others? 41%. Environmental messages about planet Earth, 39%. Future catastrophes or depopulation of humanity, 32%. A message about God or a universal creator, 31%. The concept of paranormal, parallel universes or multiverse theory, 31% said yes. So let me skip over these. Okay, now, as the previous slide shows, was that the vast majority of these messages were telepathic. They were in their native languages, and they mainly dealt with spirituality issues and ecological issues and science issues. Okay, now, physical experiences. Okay, you go to a UFO conference, okay, from these so-called experts in the field, okay, and they talk about UFO contact. They'll tell you that the contact experience is primarily associated with abductions. In order to have contact, you have to have been abducted, okay? And for example, years ago, Whitley Strieber introduced me as an abduction researcher, right? And I stopped him right then and there. I said, Whitley, do you realize that in our research study, the people that had seen UFOs and had contact with non-human intelligence, the percent that stated that they were abductees, that they've been abducted, was only 1/3. That's it. So I'm not an abduction researcher, because that's a false terminology. Okay. And so he apologized, he corrected himself, and he knew that that was inappropriate. But that's, if you talk to Whitley now, he's like Mr. Love and Light, Mr. Love and Light. Just listen to his recent couple of books, and his lectures and his discussions. Okay. He's totally moved away from the communion, Whitley Strieber, from the mid 80s into a totally different paradigm, where he gives thanks to the beings, which he calls the visitors, that have been interacting with him, because these visitors gave him spirituality and totally changed him for the better. So anyway, we asked all these questions about the topic of abductions and physical experiences. And I'm only going to give you a couple of them, because we literally asked over 200 questions of this topic area. Okay. Have you ever had ET contact, but have no conscious recollection of ever being abducted, which is defined as taken against your will to another location? Well, 68%, yes, I've had ET contact, but I've never been abducted. 68%, 2/3 of the people said, no, I've never been abducted. We asked the opposite of the people that have had an abduction. And again, it was 1/3 of the people have been abducted. Now, we asked this question just of the abductees, the people that said, yes, I've been abducted. Okay. So we asked them to categorize their experiences. And this is the question: how would you characterize your first few and your last few contact experiences with non-human intelligence? Okay. And on the right, you'll see in red your last few experiences. And right next to it is the first few experiences. So this is, let's say, for example, someone has had abductions, 30 years ago. That would be in the list of the first few. And then if this occurred recently, or, the last experience, and that would be the last few. That's in red, colored red. Okay. What we discovered was that more than 70% of these people that were abductees, okay, these people don't call themselves abductees anymore. They call themselves contactees. Okay. So let's start from the highest category. It's a case of being a conscious contactee, an egalitarian, an equal relationship, 35%. And then the next category going down from that is you are not an abductee, but a contactee, where you are being treated with respect and understanding, 35%. Now let's go down the rung a little bit. It was still a case of an abduction, but they sought my permission. I said, okay, yeah, it's okay. Take me, I'm willing to go. And they treated me in a humane, compassionate manner, 8.7%. So far, we've got the 75% and almost 9%. We're talking 84% of the people basically said, yes, I've had an abduction, but, I gave them permission. Okay, they treated me humanely, compassionate. I was treated with respect, with understanding, 84%. That's not what you hear on the internet and all of ufology. Now let's again move down the rung of experiences. It was a case of abduction, but it was of a milder kind, a slightly more caring kind. That was 13.1%. And then the last one, okay? It was a case of abduction, but of the most negative kind. That was 8%. Now, again, these are the abductees. So if you look at the most negative kind of abduction, the stuff that's circulating in the internet, it's only 8%, okay? Now, let's take a look at the number of experiences that people have had, okay? Approximately how many times have you seen or interacted with non-human intelligence? As you could see in the purple color there, more than 20 times is 40%. So between 11 and 20 times is 6.2%. Between 8 and 10 times, okay, but the number didn't show up, but basically the vast 5 and 7% was 10%. So one time is only 14%. Between 2 to 4 times, 22%. So the vast majority of people that have had contact with non-human intelligence have been more than 4 times. Okay, like 2/3 of the people have had contact more than 4 times. Now, this graphic, this bar chart shows the more contact experiences you've had, the more positive is your interpretation of your experience. So in other words, if you've only had one contact experience, it's 50% positive rate. Now, again, it doesn't mean that it's negative, okay? It could be either neutral or negative, okay? But just to show you the positivity of it. Now, if you've had contact more than 20 times, you'll see that the positivity rate goes all the way up to 75%, okay? And again, emphasizing the other 25% are not only negative. These are either neutral or negative experiences. But as I showed you before, even for the abductees, it was only 8% viewed their experiences as highly negative. So in summary, 2/3 of the people have never had an abduction. Out of those that were abducted, 71% now call themselves contactees and not abductees. And only 8% of the people that have had an abduction said it was an abduction of the most negative kind. And again, those are the people that usually had only 1 or 2 experiences. Still, they're frightened. Most of them were frightened by the physicality of these beings, because it's not like a blue-eyed, blonde palladium being right in front of you. You know, the ones that answered negative were usually either the reptilians or either the tall or the short grays, because of the physicality of it. Now, as I showed in one of my previous slides, 50% of the people were brought to what we're calling a matrix reality, to another multi-dimensional reality. And I gave you an example of that happened to me. But yet, 50% of the people said yes. So that leads to the hypotheses that we're dealing with a manipulation of space-time. So if you look at NDEs, that's a manipulation of space-time. You're looking at OBEs, manipulation of space-time. Remote viewing, a manipulation of space-time, okay? You ingest ayahuasca, all of a sudden you're having contact with non-human intelligence in some other reality. That's a manipulation of space-time. Now, with this research study, we're able to conclude that yes, also with UFO contact, there is a manipulation of space-time, okay? The matrix reality, as I said before, that happened in my car. Now we ask questions about people that were brought to that matrix reality. Okay, were you physically present in your body? You'll see to the right questions, the people that said yes. Okay, and the percent numbers. I'm not going to read off all the numbers because it'll just take too much time. Were you physically present in your body? 61% said yes. Was your consciousness separated from your body? 67%. Did your thoughts speed up? 57%. Were your senses more vivid than usual? 76%. Did you feel separated from your body? 53%. Now, the reason for that discrepancy between your consciousness separated from your body and that you thought you were in your body was that with these experiences, part of you feels that you're in your body and another part of you know that you're just pure consciousness. So that's why you get that seemingly contradiction in responses. And I could tell you because that happened to me too. Did you have a feeling of peace or pleasantness? 73%. Did you see or feel surrounded by brilliant lights? 52%. Did you encounter a mystical being, a presence, or did you hear a voice? 79% said yes. Did you see deceased or religious spirits? 37%. Did scenes from your past come back to you? 27%. Did you seem to encounter some otherworldly, unearthly world? 70%. Did time seem to speed up or slow down? 76%. Okay. As I described to you with my experience driving my car, where I was brought to my other reality, I was in that other reality 20 or 30 minutes. But when I was brought back, 0 time had elapsed. Okay. I was taken outside of space and time. Did you feel a sense of harmony or unity within the universe? 69%. Did you suddenly seem to understand everything 59%. That's extremely common for OBE experiencers and NDE experiencers. And Edgar Mitchell described this. He had a samadhi experience where he was coming back from the moon, where all of a sudden he had like a instantaneous download of knowing everything, that we're all interrelated. It was like universal consciousness, universal awareness. And all of a sudden, instantaneously, boom, it was gone. It was taken away. And he was like, what the hell happened to me in space? Okay. So, and from there led him to found the Institute for Noetic Sciences, which is now probably the world's leading academic research institute on the psi phenomenon and the paranormal as well. So, did scenes from the future come to you? 41%. Did scenes from the past come to you? 31%. Did this reality of this multi-dimensional experience seem real to you? Very important question. 83.4%, yes, very, very real. Did you perceive that time did not exist? 71% said yes. Okay, so as you can see by all of these questions that we asked, you could see that the NDE contact experience, and it was 50% of these people were brought to a matrix reality, is very, very similar to OBEs and to NDEs and to remote viewing, and also to shamanic journeys, to the hallucinogenic journeys, because these questions are borrowed from NDE surveys, but I applied them to the UFO contact phenomenon. And look at these similarities. Now let's look at spirituality and spiritual world, related type of experiences. Okay, that's another major finding, that contact involves this whole aspect of spirituality with non-human intelligence. Now, this is the first series of questions, what the experiencers believe, not what non-human intelligence told them. This is what they believe, okay? So 97% of the people that took our survey believe that non-human intelligence can travel to other dimensions. 91% believe that there's some sort of a grand plan in motion and that experiencers are all part of. 89% believe that there is a connection between non-human intelligence and the paranormal. 83% believe that there's a connection between non-human intelligence and the spirit world. 82% believe that non-human intelligence can travel to the past and to the future. 75.5% believe that there is a connection between non-human intelligence and reincarnation. 45% have reached an agreement with non-human intelligence. 38% believe that non-human intelligence are modern angels. That's how I perceive the intelligences that I'm interacting with, because they have all the powers, all the abilities of what we commonly think of angelic powers, okay? But that's why I put modern angels, because it's we're not referring biblical context here. 30% agreed to be taken aboard a UFO craft. 31% were given a message about God. 30% were told by non-human intelligence about the death process and the spirit world. 28% believe that that the non-human intelligence told them. Oh, I'm sorry. This section here is what non-human intelligence told the person. This is not what they believe. This is what they were told. Okay. 31% were told by ETs or non-human intelligence about God. 30% were told about the death process and the spirit world. 29%, the beings told them where they were from. 26% were given a message about reincarnation. 25% were told of their mission here on Earth. 25% were shown how to do energy work. 25% were told that at one time they actually were an ET, okay, or non-human intelligence. 24% were told by non-human intelligence about their past lives. Okay, now, again, I apologize, the audio is not working. It should have popped up. Let me see if this thing works here. Oh, yes.
Hello.
We can't hear.
Oh, I apologize. Goodness, I could hear it on my end. Okay, it's not working. But basically, here's a lengthy quote by Jacques Vallée. Many folks that might know who he is, he, in my opinion, is the dean of UFO experiencer research. His first research into this field was in the early 1960s. He was a close colleague. Excuse me? Yeah, he was a close colleague of the late Dr. Alan Hynek. And he's written numerous books about ufology and the UFO contact phenomenon. And one of his most important books is titled UFOs, the Psychic Solution. US UFO Influences on the Human Race. So let me read. Okay, I apologize for you not getting the audio. It's when I do shares on the internet, it doesn't work. Now, this is Dr. Jacques Vallée. He wrote the foreword to this book titled The Simulation Hypotheses. Remember, I told you that the vast majority of the members of our organization believe that consciousness is fundamental, is primary, and that we're in a simulated type of reality. Not from a computer science perspective, that we're within a computer program per se that's created by another being, but something much more complex than that. So Dr. Jacques Vallée, in the foreword to this book titled The Simulation Hypotheses, he stated, the simulation hypothesis presents a radical alternative to current models of reality. Many fields rejected or neglected by modern science, such as the psychic phenomenon and even UFOs, can be brought under this framework. The result is a stunning reappraisal of what it means to be human in an infinite universe. That's the late Dr. Still alive, Dr. John Vallée. Now, Dr. John Mack, for many of you who do not know, he was killed in a car crash, I believe, in London in the early 2000s. And in 1999, he published an extremely important book titled Passport to the Cosmos, Human Transformation and Alien Encounters. Now, Dr. Mack was a tenured professor of psychiatry at the Harvard Medical School. So we're talking about the cream of the crop here in terms of academic scientists that became interested in researching UFO contact experiences. So Dr. John Mack, in his book, Passport to the Cosmos, he states, people know their experiences, and what they have undergone does not fit with the prevailing mechanistic worldview. In other words, the experiencers know that this is not about materialism. Okay. Large percentages of people seem to know that there is an unseen world or hidden dimensions of reality. Okay. So in other words, the experiencers knows that we're not dealing with a purely materialistic phenomenon. We're dealing something that's multi-dimensional, okay? And that's something that's consciousness based, okay? Dr. Jeffrey Long, again, I wish I could play it for you guys to hear it, but Dr. Jeffrey Long is one of the leading researchers on the near-death experiences. And I don't have his quote because it was supposed to be just mainly audio, but he is one of the co-chairs of the CCRI. As I mentioned, there's 3 co-chairs. There's Dr. Rudy Shields, the professor from Harvard, Jeffrey Long, who's a medical oncologist, a cancer specialist, and one of the leading academics on near-death experiences, and myself. Okay, now our book, Beyond UFOs, as I said, is filled with tons of data from our academic research study. The title of the book is Beyond UFOs, the Science of Consciousness and Contact with Non-Human Intelligence. And that can be purchased at Amazon via both a hard copy or a Kindle version. As I said before, if you don't want to purchase the book, or if you just want to check it out, send me an email. And I will send you various chapters from that book. And I'll give you my email towards the end. Hold on, I'm almost done. Now, what I want to do is compare the similarities between UFO contact experiences and near-death experiences, and also out-of-body experiences. Number one, communication takes place in one's native language. Also, people are not flapping their lips to talk to each other. It's all telepathic. Again, both near-death experiences and with UFO contact. Both of these phenomena involve an out-of-body experience, okay? For the vast majority of NDEs, not all NDEs, okay? But as we showed, 80% of the people that have had UFO-related contact experiences have had an out-of-body experience. Energy beings, human beings, ghost spirits, those are 3 out of the 4 major types of beings that people see in UFO contact. Well, they happen to be the 3 major types of beings that people are seeing in an NDE. Okay, is that a coincidence? No, I don't think so. Okay, both groups involve medical healings. As I showed you before, the free experiencer research study, 50% of the people had a medical healing. For the NDE phenomenon, there's several very well-known classic NDE cases that had a medical healing. One was Anita Morjani, and she was completely healed of a stage 4 cancer. And Dr. Eben Alexander, also a professor at the Harvard Medical School, except he was a professor of neurosurgery. He taught medical doctors, residents, how to cut people's brains and do surgeries on the brain. So, I mean, we're talking people at the highest level here. And he had a disease, a bacteria, that made his brain like mashed potatoes. And he was healed completely from that disease. So, you cannot explain it. It's just like our dog. Our dog was totally healed of a total paralysis in 1 hour. And the topic of reincarnation, again, similarities between both concepts, the concept of reincarnation in both NDEs and UFO contact. Visions of the future, visions of the past, okay? Again, with both phenomena. For illustrations, visions of the future are usually associated with the UFO contact phenomena. And these are usually, people are given scenes of the future of our planet destroyed, burning up in fire, how humans are destroying the planet. And visions of the past, it's more common in the near-death experience where people are given a life review. 1 out of every 4 people in NDEs are shown all the things, the good things that have done in their lives and the bad things. That's called a life review. And they physically relive it. So, but also with UFO contact, they've had visions of the past, okay? And same thing with visions of the future. Also in NDEs, people were shown visions of the future. Like, look, you got to go back. You can't stay up here, in the spirit world. You got to go back. And then they showed a woman with like, a child, a baby, and told them, look, when you go back, you're going to have a child. That child is going to need you, okay? That sort of thing. Also, the total personality transformation. I went over that data, and I showed you the comparison between the NDE phenomena. Taken to a matrix reality. By definition, having an NDE, you're brought to a matrix reality. But also showed you that 50% of the people that have had UFO-related contact were also brought to a matrix reality. Also, once you've had contact, UFO contact, or once you get returned from an NDE, a very large percentage of people all of a sudden develop precognition skills, or those precognition skills become really heightened, okay? Paranormal experiences. I documented the paranormal aspect of the UAP phenomena. Same thing with NDE contact experiences. For both groups, okay? People begin to see now the ghosts and spirits. Our book is going to have like 5 people that had near-death experiences. All of them began to see ghosts and spirits after this. One of the individuals was Dr. Yvonne Kaysen. She was one of the ex-presidents of the International Association of Near-Death Studies. She began to see, tons of ghosts and spirits. Same thing with Dr. Melinda Greer, another medical doctor. She had 2 NDEs. After her second NDE, all of a sudden in her hospital, she began to see all these deceased people, okay? Extremely common. Well, as you saw from our UFO research data, almost 3 out of 4 people had seen ghosts and spirits, deceased people. Okay. Also, both phenomena involve a manipulation of electronic devices. Okay. Your computer all of a sudden crashes all the time. You're wearing an electronic watch, malfunctions. Okay. Extremely common for both groups. Spiritual messages. Okay. I showed you at a whole section about spiritual messages for UFO contact experiencers. Well, guess what? NDE contact experiencers, the same thing. And that leads one to hypothesize, and with both groups, that consciousness is non-local and that consciousness is fundamental. Number two, that what's taking place here among both groups is a manipulation of space-time. Like, you didn't hear it, but this is what Dr. Jacques Vallée said in his interview that I wasn't able to play. And also, we're dealing with something that's multi-dimensional in nature, and that we might be living within a multi-dimensional reality. Okay, so the title of our new book is A Greater Reality, the New Paradigm of Consciousness, the Paranormal, and the Contact Modalities. Okay, we have 4 volumes in this book. Each of the volumes is going to be approximately 800 pages each. Okay, we're going to have, now it's more than 90 authors, but now we have 25 PhD academics, and volumes 1 and 2 will be theoretical books in nature, and they will be presenting diverse personal hypotheses by the academics involved in our organization on the nature of our multidimensional reality and contact with non-human intelligence. And they're going to be addressing the question, what is the relationship between consciousness, our cosmology, and contact with non-human intelligence via the contact modalities. Volumes 3 and 4 are going to be based upon articles by major contact experiencers that are going to be talking about their own personal experiences. And the vast majority of these people have had more than 3 different types of contact experiences with the contact modalities. For example, people that have had near-death experiences, they've also had UFO contact, they've also had out-of-body experiences, or have done astral traveling, for example, or people that have seen ghosts and spirits. We're talking about people that have had all of them wrapped up into one. So those chapters, those volumes 3 and 4 are the experiencer chapters. Oops. This is the cover of our new book. It's going to be released on September 1st of this year. And as I said before, I will send you information about our new organization. And our new organization, the email that you could send it to is info@experiencer.org. Please write that down if you want free information to read about the various chapters of the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Free Experiencer Research Study, and all information about the CCRI. So it's info, INFO, at experiencer, EXPERIENCER.org. And I stated earlier, our 2 websites are going to be released on September 1st, the date that we're going to be publishing our book. And this concludes my my presentation, and hopefully I'm back to the screen. Hello, am I back to the main screen here?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. So now if people have questions.
I have a question. Hi, thank you so much for your talk. And actually for the research that you've conducted, because as someone who hasn't really had any experiences, it's very reassuring to have somebody present a scientific view on the whole topic.
Thank you. And one correction, it wasn't my research. It was research of a very large group of PhD academics.
Right.
And non-academic researchers. We worked together. The people that had their boots on the ground, that have been researchers of this phenomenon for many, many years, they weren't academics. So we brought in academics from diverse fields, astrophysicists, PhD physicists, neuroscientists, psychiatrists, psychologists, all working together, say, how do we research this phenomenon? Something that's never been done before.
Yeah, I mean, it's fantastic. what I wanted to ask was, after gathering all this data, have you got any theories about why the people who have these experiences, why is it them? Is there anything similar between them? Is they, like, as somebody who has never had an experience and would love to have an experience, I kind of think, wow, how did that happen? Is there something that they all have in common, or have you got any theories about that?
There's numerous commonalities, but all of these experiences are pretty much diverse, separate experiences for the person. There are some similar overlaps, but each of them are unique. Now, we did ask that question of, goodness, we asked maybe 40 questions of their experiences as a child. So we asked these people, when did these experiences start? What specific experiences? How it developed over time? What were their experiences exactly? And what we found out was that only a small group of these individuals, like a third, their experiences started as a child. Okay, the other 2/3, like in my case, my experiences started. I'm almost 65 years old, and the experience started in 2012. Okay, so 9 years ago, I was what? 53 years old when these things started. So, so it's many of these people had major and became major experiencers as adults. Now, in terms of why these experiences are taking place, let me give you a hypothesis. Okay, I think it's a very rational hypothesis. Okay, and let me pose that response by posing a series of questions. Okay. This is for the entire group. For example, when did the whole concept of humans interacting with off-world people, ETs, whatever you might want to call it, when did that really become popular internationally? Okay, and again, this is before the internet. I would say with Star Trek. Okay, and that Star Trek really began, I guess, what, 69 or so, but really took off in 1970. Okay, so I would argue that it was with Star Trek, there was a TV series that was picked up internationally. That's when this whole aspect of contact with off-world, beings began. So it was 1970. Near-death experiences. When did that become popular internationally? Okay, and again, this is before the internet, so you can't blame the internet on this. Okay, I would argue that was with the publications of Raymond Moody's book titled Life After Life. Okay, Life After Life. That was 1975. Okay, and Elizabeth Kubler-Ross published her book in 1974 on the afterlife, but that really was an international bestseller. Raymond Moody's book was an international bestseller because he was both a medical doctor and a PhD academic in philosophy. Okay, so the other major contact modality is out-of-body experiences. When did out-of-body experiences really become internationally well known? Well, that was through the works of Robert Monroe, okay, who really published for the first time major research on out-of-body experiences. And he published 2 major books, again, in the early 70s, 1970s. So ghosts and spirits, people have been talking about that since the late 1800s, and all ancient writings, have mentioned, deceased people, ghosts and spirits. So, but at least for NDEs, for OBEs, and for UFO, contact experiences, what really became an international sensation within 5 years of each other. Okay. Now, what have these experiences done? Okay. I'm the type of individual that I ask almost anyone that I meet, that I have some lengthy time with them, I ask them topics, related to these things. For example, there was people that were putting asphalt on a home that I purchased. Okay. All of them have heard of NDEs. All of them heard of out-of-body experiences, okay? All of them heard of UFOs. Some of them have had paranormal experiences themselves, okay? And this was like 5 men, okay? So you go grocery shopping, and all of a sudden, the National Enquirer has an article about UFOs or something like that. So you talk to the lady in front of you, look at that, what do you think, ma'am? Do real UFOs really exist? She goes, I know they exist because I saw one 10 years ago. And it was real big and very large, So if you open yourselves up to talk about these things to everyone, 1 out of every 2 or 3 people will respond back with some type of experience that they either had or they heard from another close family member or a friend. These are very common experiences. And also people know these terminologies. Now, the final question I have to the group is, was it a coincidence that all of the experiences occurred within 5 years of each other? My response would be no, that these were all programmed events by the universal mind, okay? Non-human intelligence, whatever you might want to coin this thing, whatever this intelligence is. It was pre-programmed events to occur now because we're at a point now where we're self-destructing ourselves. We're self-destructing our planet, okay? We're making our planet uninhabitable. We're have the option through all these nuclear arms race to totally annihilate each other. So they're doing it now to awaken humanity to the nature of our multi-dimensional reality. So what I think is the purpose of it, and as you saw the transformation, right? The data on the transformation. That's just not with UFO contact experiences, also with NDE experiences, with OBE experiences, and also people that take ayahuasca and magic mushrooms. The Johns Hopkins University Medical School did that study of how these people are transformed. So there's one of the top medical schools in the United States. And they published an article about how these people changed. And they quoted our research study. But their research also concludes that the people that have taken hallucinogens underwent this major transformation, for the positive. And people that were hooked on drugs or alcoholism, people that were severely depressed, all of a sudden, they totally changed, okay? So, I think what's going on is that it's awakening of humanity, but it's being done at an individualized level. It's not huge groups, okay? But I believe that CE5, what is commonly called CE5, that I prefer the term H.I.C.E, human initiated contact experiences, because it's a more appropriate term, that phenomenon is one of the better ways to be able to initiate contact, because you have to go out to wherever you go to with what is commonly called an antenna, someone who's had major contact experiences and that can quickly communicate telepathically with non-human intelligence. And then by someone in the group saying this, all of a sudden they're changed for the rest of their life, okay? Because you're seeing this object in the sky moving around, and the person says, okay, now I'm gonna tell them to go to the left, okay, everybody? I'm gonna tell them to go to the left. So you don't even finish that sentence and that object is going to the left. Okay, so once you've had these experiences, all of a sudden you're changed for the rest of your life. Okay, and so that's what I think is taking place. There are other groups out there that are teaching people how to do out-of-body experiences. They're teaching people how to do through mystical meditation or holotrophic breathing, how to achieve transcendental state of consciousness and have contact. There's one specific academic professor in our group, okay? Major experiencer. How did he start? He started doing holotrophic breathing because a friend invited him to a workshop. What the hell? I'm going to kill some time, right? And all of a sudden he got into the breathing, he got into this transcendental state, and he heard a voice said, Raul, don't worry about your wife becoming pregnant. Within 2 weeks, she's going to tell you she's pregnant, and it's going to be a girl, and you're going to name her, this particular name, the name that you always wanted, okay? And he quickly woke up out of that state that he was in, and he ran out because he was scared of what had just happened. Well, 2 weeks later, his wife told him that she was pregnant. Later on, they had the sonogram. It showed it was a baby girl, okay? And then, mind you, this man and his wife were going to infertility treatments for 5 years. So once that was confirmed, he then went back to that workshop on holotrophic breathing, and now he wasn't scared anymore. Okay, mind you, this guy's a tenured professor of information sciences, okay? A professor of statistics and data and numbers, okay? And so he then went back, and he says to this day, he has these reciprocal back and forth contact experiences with a being. He never seen a being, it was just back and forth communication, and the messages deal with our reality, the nature of our reality and spirituality, how humanity needs to change, exactly what our data shows, So, and his name is Dr. Raul Valverde. And I can go public now because I interviewed him, recorded him, and he finally went public with his experiences. So So yes, that would be my response. Penny, right?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Ray, we've got a couple
Yes.
of questions from people. If I can just ask you these.
Please.
Had a really good question from Joe Berkhamshire, who's asked, basically, it sounds like, have you ever heard of the work of Professor Donald Hoffman at all?
Yes.
Yeah, great. Yeah, because obviously it sounds like Professor Donald Hoffman is doing, is trying to come at this from a mathematical point of view. And it sounds like you're both on the same page. Do you agree with his work about if he's coming at because he's a mathematician and a physicist, and he's trying to prove his hypothesis mathematically? Do you agree with his work then?
Well, a lot of individuals have seen some of his lectures and read some of his materials, and while he does share 90% of what we believe in, we're living in a virtual reality, consciousness is fundamental, that sort of thing, his mathematics is not taking us there, okay? Also, he doesn't incorporate the contact modalities. He's just talking about pure consciousness. So from that sense, he's still approaching it from a mainstream materialist perspective in terms of trying to prove this mathematically, okay? Like Einstein trying to come up with a unified theory of physics based upon pure physics and mathematics, okay? That's not the approach to take it, okay? The individuals in our organization, we've got 3 PhD physicists as well, okay? Is that it's the experiencers, by researching them, of all of the contact modalities will give us a better understanding of what questions to ask, of what might be taking place. But because Donald Hoffman really does not focus on the contact modalities, we still believe he has a long way to go, okay? The person that I would say, from my personal perspective, is the closest, the best theoretical argument of how to approach this would be physicist Tom Campbell, okay? Just type in Tom Campbell, physicist, out-of-body experiences. He actually began to work with the man who really popularized out-of-body experiences, Robert Monroe. He was listed in mentioned in Robert Monroe's books as Dr. TC. Nobody knew who this man was until many years later he came out publicly that he was the one. So he learned how to do out-of-body experiences, and this man has been doing astral traveling for over 40 years. And in many of his astral travels, just like my friend, Dr. Raul Valverde, he's having communication back and forth with conscious intelligence. And they've given him tons of stuff. And a lot of the information that was given to him is almost exactly the same as information that was given to me. I won't be able to go into his theories here because it's extremely complicated, but just listen to some of his lectures. If I would say people that want to get into the theory of all of this, and by the way, volumes 1 and volume 2 of our book are going to be focusing mainly on theory, okay, of the relationship between consciousness and the contact modalities. Volume 3 or 4 are articles from the experiencers. But I would tell people to look up Tom Campbell and to listen to some of his lectures.
Was Tom Campbell in any way responsible for the declassified CIA paper when they talk about Gateway and Hemisync at all? Because that was the Monroe Institute was behind that, wasn't it?
No, he wasn't any part of that. He has no relationship to the spooks and stuff like that. What happens is that people have known about that. For example, Dr. John Alexander was a colonel in the U.S. Army. He was put in place of researching the paranormal in the U.S. Army. He was also involved with remote viewing, in the U.S. Army, of using that as a tool, okay, for spying, for example, okay. And so everybody knew about it. So it's not like a declassification of Hemisync. That's why a lot of these things that are circulating on the internet, to me, it's a total joke, because all the military knew about it because it's been widely circulated, by many of the people that work directly with Robert Monroe of the Hemisync program. So they knew about it 30 years ago. People were discussing about it openly, of the relationship between the military's knowledge of that and learning how to do out-of-body experiences, just like they knew about remote viewing, researching and applying remote viewing.
No, sure. What's your feeling if we're rejecting materiality, as you touched on, and you're well aware, obviously, and you're very much aware of the CE5 community. What's your opinion on the theory about the subatomic vibration, Ray, and whether or not that influences someone's ability to have an experience?
I have no idea what you're talking about, subatomic vibration.
Okay.
My hypothesis is will be presented in our book, and it's the hypotheses of all the academics in our book.
Okay.
We're going to be presenting Dr. Edgar Mitchell's magnum opus article on the quantum hologram theory of consciousness, which talks about how telepathic communication functions, how we are able to tap into the information fields, commonly called the Akashic records. Okay, there's a whole phenomenon, whole process for that. If anyone is interested in that specific argument, send me an email, and I'll send and specifically mention Edgar Mitchell's article, and I'll discuss that. He worked with many PhD physicists over many years. One of them was Hal Puthoff, who was a member of this Bob Bigelow's group and Tom DeLonge's group, whatever, whatever that organization is called. Hal Puthoff was one of the major pioneers of remote viewing out of the Stanford Research Institute. Yeah, I'm sorry? Someone said something? Okay, anyway, send me an email to info@experiencer.org and specifically mention that you would like to review Edgar's article, and I'll send you Edgar's article. It's not an easy read because it's a science-based article. So it to me, it gives the best possible explanation of how we as humans are being able to communicate with non-human intelligence. And also a PhD academic, he got his PhD out of the University of London. His name is Dr. Glenn Ryan. He is a biochemist, and he wrote an article of how do we apply Edgar's theory to the contact phenomenon. So both of those articles are going to be appearing in our book. Any other questions?
Yeah.
I'm here. You might as well take advantage of me.
I don't have a question. I just want to say thank you. The 2 hours of your time, that's so generous. So we really thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said, Karina.
Well, you're very welcome. What it is, Karina, is that very few people actually know of this data. Very few people have actually read the book. And so what you get still within ufology is all this BS that's circulating. And why? Because it's the established paradigm. And that's why our new book, the title of it is A Greater Reality, the New Paradigm of Non-Local Consciousness, the Paranormal and the Contact Modalities. As with new paradigms, it takes the old dinosaurs dying off before the younger researchers to begin to fully embrace these new concepts, these new ideas, okay? If you even look at the field of ufology, look at it in the 1980s. The 1980s was all abduction-based, was all fear-based, and it was like, you could only talk about Roswell crash, and all these other crashes. That was the field of ufology, okay? And now you're seeing a very large numbers of people moving away from that and getting into consciousness-based approaches. For example, I mentioned earlier Whitley Strieber, okay? Whitley Strieber is now Mr. Consciousness, Mr. Love and Light, but yet he started off as a fear-based abduction-related type of writer, okay? Kathleen Martin, one of the pillars of the experiencer writings, of abduction writings. She wrote the book on Benny and Barney Hill, which is everyone associated as a fear-based experience. People don't know that Kathy is a major experiencer. She's also had a medical healing, a major medical healing. And she was in our book. She was one of the subjects, the 12 people that we focused on in chapter 6 on UFO medical healings in our book, Beyond UFOs. At that time, she didn't want her name known publicly, but now she doesn't mind. Okay. Now she's, a totally different perspective of this phenomenon. She doesn't see it as a negative experience. She sees it as a totally transformative experience, and that's consciousness based. So this is Kathleen Martin. Same thing with Barbara Lamb, Leo Sprinkle, and many of the researchers in this field. You're still going to be getting other people who get invited to all the major UFO conferences. They're still totally clueless about that. They won't even read our book. They'll just make disparaging comments about it without even reading it, because they're materialist. Okay, to them is they want to be able to talk about the Roswell crash, for the next 1,000 years, about the purely physical aspects of nuts and bolts, oh, let's analyze this material that people found after they saw a UFO on the ground. Let's analyze this new picture, the new TikTok picture, let's analyze that, okay? That's what materialist ufology has been in the past, but I think it's slowly transitioning to the new paradigm of post-material sciences, which argues that we're living in a multi-dimensional reality, and that these experiences are tied into the other contact modalities. Any questions?
Yes, I have another one. Sorry, it's Penny again.
No, keep it. Take advantage of me, Penny, because
okay, great. Thank you so much. I was just thinking about. It makes a lot of sense what you were just saying. Actually, the more I've looked into the whole issue, the UFO issue, and suddenly became aware of it, and as I've gone down this journey of trying to meditate, and you think then the question of consciousness arises, and I'm in the middle of exploring all of that. So, but one question was about, a lot of people said that the messages that they received from when they had their experience or contact was about the environment and how humans at the moment are destroying the planet. But there's also this transformation of people as well that they go through having this experience. So is anybody or do you know of anybody who's actually then moved to change careers to do something about the environment? Are there any indications or messages from these experiences that tell people what they should be doing, if there's anything they could do to help save the planet, in fact?
Oh yeah, lots of people. I guess the most famous name is Jim Sparks. He wrote a book, I don't know, 10 or 15 years ago about his contact experiences. And that he wrote that when he was in the fearful stage, still under the umbrella of fear. Okay, but he eventually began to form organizations and petitions to be able to buy land in the Amazon to protect the ozone layers.
Oh, wow.
And he went very public to that. Many of the researchers in the field, experiencers, have spoken about that we need to be able to protect our planet. A lot of my posts on Facebook have been dealing with that. Joseph Burks, a well-known researcher in this field of CE5, which, as I said, he doesn't use that word. He calls it H.I.C.E. He's made numerous posts about protecting our planet, and not only that, but other types of progressive agendas, of humanity becoming more loving and caring towards each other.
Ray,
messages.
Sorry, just to say, just in the same way that you mentioned that the ufology is going through a transformation from this nuts and bolts to more of a consciousness approach. I think the environmental message is moving away from saving the planet, because the planet will continue going even if we're not here. It's actually, this is a reframing this as to protect the environment, to save ourselves.
Yes.
And that's an evolution that's taking place, with that at the moment. And yeah, I think, as you said, that gentleman that bought up a lot of land in the the rainforest, I've heard of a couple of other examples of that now, and a couple of key entrepreneurs who experiences have moved into sustainable energy, and I suppose what everybody's chasing, which is the 100% free energy.
Yes. As a matter of fact, there is an organization headed up by Susan Manowicz, and she co-wrote a chapter with Dr. John Klimo about science and physics downloads in our book. It was a whole chapter just dedicated to individuals that received science and physics downloads. And what she's doing is she's matching up the experiencers that are receiving all these science and physics downloads to engineers and scientists that are willing to build some of these contraptions of the downloads that people are getting. And I would say maybe more than a half of these deal with energy-related technologies, and another third deal with environmental type of technologies. So, you know, a very common theme that people are getting, you know, in terms of the need for technological change. So yes, Susan Manowicz, she worked with Dr. John Mack, okay, in the early 90s, and she's a major experiencer. And she also wrote a chapter for our upcoming book about her experiences. So she's one of them that's actually implementing these projects at a major level. Oh, one thing I want to say for folks, okay, in terms of the phenomenon of trying to communicate with UAP-related intelligence, okay, that really was became popular with Sixto Paz Wells, and that was in the early 70s. All the protocols that majority of people are using now came from Sixto Paz Wells, okay. What you had was someone taking credit for it, okay, for these things. But I know Sixto Paz Wells personally. When he comes to visit to the U.S., he stays at the home of my best friend, Alberto Hernandez, who's a major contact experiencer, one of the top contact experiencers in the world, okay, and his wife Rebecca. He's a retired DEA federal agent. Also, another very good friend of mine, Giorgio Piacenza, who is from Peru. His uncle started getting messages of going out to the desert at the same time that Sixto Paz and his brother were getting these messages. Okay. As a matter of fact, both groups started because they started to learn the Silva method, which is a method to get into transcendental states, the Silva learning method. Okay, both of them were doing it, which is very prominent in Latin America. Okay, so here you had these two different families in the same neighborhood in Peru in 1974 were getting various messages, you know, downloads into their brains, you know, like go out to the desert here on such and such date, such and such time, and we'll be there. We'll appear to you. Okay, so Giorgio's uncle, not knowing that Sixto Paz was getting the same thing, he would go out there, and they would see a huge UFO. Okay, and then for the second time, I think he invited Giorgio's father and Giorgio Piacenza at that time was 14 years old, so they saw the huge UFO, and then the uncle and Sixto Paz's brother began to doing automatic writing. When they would get these things, they would just they learned that that's a part of the Silva learning method, the automatic writing stuff, right? And so then they would get, you know, actual messages. And then several months later, they found out about each other and they joined forces. So my friend Giorgio Piacenza and Alberto Hernandez, because he was been doing what is commonly called CE5 since the mid 80s. He would go down to Peru and join Sixto out in the desert. And he showed me blown up pictures of these huge UFOs. And also some of them were at the level of the ground that Alberto almost touched at the level of the ground, because him and Sixto were there. They started walking off, both of them, into the desert. And then this craft was on the desert. They thought it was a car because they had these very powerful lights, but it was actually a craft that was at the level of the ground. And so he knows all about this. So I'm getting it straight from the horse's mouth from Giorgio and from Sixto and from my friend Alberto Hernandez. Also, I'm a very close friend of Ricardo Fernandez. No, Ricardo, the hell's his last name? Fernandez? Oh, goodness. He's a major...
Ricardo Gonzalez.
Gonzalez. I don't know why that that mind melt occurred. Again, when Ricardo would stay, he would stay at the homes of my friends who were both members of Rama from the 1980s. And so Alberto would call me, or this other woman named Rosita. Guess who's here? You know, Ricardo's here. Come by, you know. So I would go by and hang out with them. So I know these people at a first name basis. So basically what's circulating today, a lot of it was based upon the Grupo Rama protocols and the ideas and the philosophy. So I would, and then Joseph Burks, I've known Joseph since FREE started. He was a member of our research committee, 2013. And Joseph started working with Dr. Greer in 1992. And after 8 years, he left for very good reasons, which I won't go into publicly. So I think that this whole concept of CE5 needs to be reevaluated in terms of the history of it. Okay, and also even before Sixto Paz in the 1950s, people that were I forgot what the movement was. A lot of people in the desert in Round Rock, it's called, in California, that would communicate with human-looking beings and have contact with them. Adamski, Bob Adamski, there was like 3 or 4 of them. I forgot their names. They were actually doing CE5. They were bringing large groups out to the desert, and they were calling down intelligence, and the UFOs would appear. So
Right.
Since the yes.
Sorry, yeah. What I was going to say was we posted an article on ours. I mean, my background is anthropology, so I've studied the Native American Indians and the Aborigines, and I've found extensive evidence anthropologically to suggest that both the Aborigines have had an ongoing and sustained contact going back potentially several thousand years.
Yeah, that was the next thing I was going to say, that even before these people, native cultures from all over the world, they've had contact with non-human intelligence, and the writings and whatever has been documented of, you know, coming out from the sky, you know, it's all been fully documented in a lot of historical texts and writings. So yes, this is an ancient concept. It's not something new that someone invented. All someone did was just put a name to it, which is not really very appropriate. I think the more appropriate name would be human-initiated contact experiences, because that's what it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
No,
And
brilliant.
so it's and again, before 2012, I knew nothing of these things. Okay, you learn from other individuals, other people that have important information, both from the contact perspective, and then from the scientists, you learn about, you know, theories that are out there that might be explaining these things. And then from myself, I had both. I had contact experiences that told me about these things, you know, which I don't like to talk too much about it because it makes me seem like a crazy madman, you know, but also it enmeshed with what modern science is also hypothesizing, and what other contact experiences are also hypothesizing. So I think it's about time that we view this phenomenon from a different lens, which is a consciousness-based lens.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other questions? Feel free to ask. Don't be shy. If as I've told most people that I talk to, you know, we're totally clueless about this phenomenon. All we have is a better understanding of what questions to ask. But in terms of getting answers to these things, you know, there really are no answers. We're dealing with, you know, the world's biggest jigsaw puzzle, trying to find out, you know, the nature of this phenomenon.
Can I ask you how you coped after your first experience? How did it change you on a day-to-day basis, and how did you cope with your first experience?
The first experience really wasn't anything that changed me or impacted me. It was the continuation of these experiences and how they evolved over time. With me, with my first experience, I was just trying on the internet to research this phenomenon. And once I found, and I ordered some paranormal books. I was listening to YouTube and the internet on paranormal. And then when I found that it was UFO based, then I was ordering all these UFO books, you know. And then this is after I saw this huge, let me tell you how it gave me spirituality, okay? After I had that experience with that huge craft outside, the next day I saw a video on near-death experiences. Then all of a sudden, I ordered like 20 books on NDEs. And it started off like 4 hours a day. And then over the next four months, I eventually read over 800 books on near-death experiences. And it went from 4 hours to like 18 hours a day. And it was like nonstop. I didn't do any of my tax work that I do as a tax attorney. I didn't care about watching TV, anything else with my family. You know, it was just, I needed to read the next book. And then what happened over 3 days in a row, and let me pose this question to the members there. What would be the statistical probabilities that over a 3-day period, okay, nonstop, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, the very first 3 people you ever mentioned NDEs to, all of them had NDEs, okay? I mean, I guess I will have a better chance of winning the mega lottery, you know, tonight for $250 million than I would have having that occur to me. The very first 3 people he ever mentioned, NDEs to, all of them had it, okay? The first one was my daughter's pediatrician. The second one was this man at a church dinner, social function. The third was my own father, okay? And it was after my father told me about his NDE experiences, which was the most profound NDE experience of any book I ever read. It was after that, that on my way home, I looked up at the stars in the sky. And for the first time in my life, I talked to God, okay? Which I don't see it from a religious perspective, but like the universal mind, and to these beings that are interacting with me. And I said, I want to thank you because in a 4-month period, you have totally transformed a rational materialist atheist into someone that I don't have a belief, but I have a knowingness that I'm an eternal spiritual being. And I have that knowingness more than any Catholic priest in Miami. So I want to thank you. And so from that date, I stopped reading any NDE books. I stopped reading any UFO books, okay? And then started a whole series of paranormal experiences, you know, continued paranormal experiences. It lasted for 4 years. And I mentioned earlier that while I was driving my car, I was brought to a matrix reality where I was given detailed information about what is our universe, how it operates. And I was given information of what I needed to do. And and then within 48 hours of that happening, that experience, they put me in contact with Mary Rodwell. Mary Rodwell sent me an email. She, unknowing to me, sent an email to Rudy Shields, and he called me the very next day at 9:30 in the morning. And we spoke for 90 minutes. And then he gave me Edgar Mitchell's number and told me I needed to talk to Edgar Mitchell, that he only lived 90 minutes away. So on the second day at 10 o'clock in the morning, I was at the home of Dr. Edgar Mitchell after I had that NDE experience. Now, you could talk to Mary, you know, she will be coming to the UK again, you know, talk to her and say, look, Ray gave me this crazy story. Is it true? You know, and she'll tell you. Rudy Shields, okay? I have it in some interviews where he talks about that and he acknowledges it. So these are experiences that are I mean, you can't come up with explanations for it. How could you come up with an explanation that I would have an out-of-body experiences and within 48 hours, the Free Foundation would be formed at the home of Edgar Mitchell, okay? You can't make this stuff up. And then with the NDE stuff, 3 days in a row, you know, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The first day was Friday, December 21st, 2012. And years later, someone told me, do you know the significance of that day? I said, I don't know. He goes, Ray, that's the Mayan calendar shift, you know, which I still don't understand what the hell that is, you know. But it's apparently some day for humanity waking up. And so anyway, it was all these crazy experiences that were happening to me. And it led to a point there, Penny, where I began to drink. Okay, after I was given experiences that dealt with reincarnation and missions here on Earth. Okay, I just couldn't take that, and I began to drink for 5 days straight until these beings that I work with, they sent someone to me to like slap me in the face, wake up, like this stuff is real, you know? And I finally realized it, like after that, this being that they sent me.
Yeah.
And I realized, hey, this is real, you know? And then also I still fought that off. I wasn't drinking. I stopped drinking. Okay. But then again, the same thing, I was still not accepting it because I had been interacting with this intelligence. And then they sent me on another trip, on another mission, crazy stuff. Okay. It dealt with this major experiencer named Chris Bledsoe, where I was sent to go to his home. And finally, he tells me that he was getting all these downloads of advanced physics. Okay, just like I was. And he said something, which is what this being had told me a few days ago. And it was exactly verbatim. And I was at that point, it was like all of a sudden, like all this information started going in. And I finally understood that the being that I was interacting with, that was a real experience. And then all of a sudden, my experiences stopped. And that's it. They stopped. Cold turkey.
God.
Yeah, cold turkey.
Wow.
It stopped. Because I finally got it, you know, I stopped fighting it off, you know, and I accepted it. Okay. And like
Right.
I was ready to do my work now, you know, with the Free Foundation and now with the CCRI, because if I still got all these experiences, I would be a mad basket case, you know. So they stopped to give me space to do this work. Because now, for example, I need a spirituality in order to do this work. Because understanding and knowing spirituality, this is what this is about, okay? You're not going to be able to do anything viable with it, okay? And then they had given me the whole foundation with all these physicists involved and the nature of our reality to pursue it from that perspective. And then the data with the experiencers confirmed that, you know? So it's a very lengthy discussion for me to go into all these details and some of the things I just don't talk about it publicly, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's very interesting. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions from anyone? Well, James, if there aren't any other questions, I'm gonna go upstairs and eat lunch.
Ray, I can't thank you enough. That's been fantastic. Is there any chance we can coax you back to do another talk, maybe towards the end of September, beginning of October, after the book comes out, people have had a chance to digest it, read it, and then we could hit you with an even more informed session?
Sure, definitely. As I said before, send me an email at info@experiencer.org, and I will also put in the first 2 theoretical chapters for our new book. So people get to see who are the actual authors, the titles of their books. Now the experiencers, there's like over, I think 70 different experiences or written chapters. We're still editing those and working on those, but at least you get to see what the theoretical aspects of the book are. And I will send you that with tons of other chapters. So it's info@experiencer.org. And I'm assuming this is going to be replayed, I guess, on other sites.
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. What we'll do is I will top and tell this, and I'll put it up onto YouTube for CE5 UK members to look at afterwards, and anybody else that missed the talk this evening.
Okay. Yeah. No, thank you. And again, send me an email, and I will get you tons of information that will get you thinking from a different perspective, from a consciousness-based perspective.
Fantastic. Ray, thank you so very much for your time. And
you're very
thank
welcome.
you for everyone attending. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank
you very much for your time.
Bye.
Really enjoyed it.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Thanks, Ray. Bye.
Thank you.